Welcome, 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 brothers and sisters. Welcome to another study reading. Today, as you can see, the topic is all about the misuse of cosmic energy, part one. I'm still reading from the Orion book, written by Wes Penry, and this is chapter 16. And please go to the websites of Wes Penry himself. You can find all the links for it in the text box. Please do so and buy yourself this book and start reading it. It's loaded with a lot of valuable information. The misuse of cosmic energy. Where does the Orion universe start and end? And the other original name for Orion is Arian. An means heaven. The center of the Milky Way galaxy is also known by two other names: the womb of the mother and the central fire. These terms come from the Pleiadians and the Orion source, respectively. Both mean the same thing. It is the place from where spirit fire emanates. Does this mean it is the pleroma? I cannot say either way. But I personally do not think the galactic center is the pleroma. I feel confident the pleroma surrounds us all the time, and that the Orion universe is just an encapsulated part of the overall pleroma, or a boundary. Here is a question to ponder upon, which is, if the center of the Milky Way galaxy is the central fire, what does that make the rest of the galaxies, such as the Andromeda, etc.? Is the Milky Way equivalent to the Orion universe? And the other galaxies are external universes. So are the other galaxies then external universes? That is something to investigate. I am pondering this because I have been told the central fire is in the center of the universe. That suggests that our galaxy, the Milky Way, is the Orion universe. It also means, based on what I was told, and if my assumption is correct, soul-minds cannot travel to the Andromeda galaxy or any other galaxy, because if those are other universes, they follow completely different laws and rules, which makes sense that each and every universe has its own laws and rules. And they are not free will universes. The way we are constructed, we would perish there. If we think about it, the way the Orion source described universes was like lilies in a pond, galaxies in the cosmic water. They come in clusters of 12 and then in another cluster of 12 and so on. And Sophia, as pure spirit, is number 13, the creatrix and senior overseer. Her being what is within the universes and what is in between them, all of it being the pleroma. It starts making sense, and it's coming to me as a stream of consciousness as I write this. So it doesn't mean it is necessarily correct because of that, but more often than not, when this happens, it tends to add up. I will try to investigate this some more. However, I have suggested this before, but it is just a loose idea so far. Something to ponder. I know the Ra entities had a difficult time discussing galaxies with the channeling team because they thought of galaxies as universes. Energy theft. Until recently, the central fire was used to boost this matrix, unbeknownst to us humans. The overlords and the elite stole this energy from us. I repeat, until recently, the central fire was used to boost this matrix unbeknownst to us humans. The overlords and the elite stole this energy from us because they themselves cannot draw energy from the galactic center anymore. No, because they have uh, no connection to it anymore because they lack spirit themselves and must therefore do it through us. That is why they are seeing us as living batteries. Humans are living batteries. Yeah. For the elite and for those whom are pulling the strings behind the scenes. Normally, and as an evolving species, we are allowed to keep the energy within the system until we are evolved enough to contribute to the overall universe. A little bit of recap. While evolving on a planet or in a star, the soul energy is a loan, and star races pay back their debt when they leave the developing world where they were born. But in our case, it is misused because we give it away to the overlords and all their proxies, whom are better known as the elite, the oligarchs, and so on. And more energy was consumed as time went by. And all this you can find in the West Penry of June 15, 2012, in the second level of learning paper 2, which is titled The Creation of Universes, subsection 2, a new way of looking at the structure of the omniverse from an interdimensional perspective. That was a footnote. So other star races complained about this because it escalated. And the overlords also used and are still using this energy for their own space travels and space wars with other star races. So our energy also helps them create portals and stargates to other star systems. So we are doing constantly the work for all these fallen archangels and fallen angels and archons and whatever you have that are still pulling the strings here on our planet Earth. Not to mention, they suck us dry of our energy to boost their own, which has been on decline almost since the dawn of the Matrix. So we unwittingly help the overlords run how the central fire was meant to be used. Therefore, it was requested that this must stop because it affects other parts of the universe, not only our neck of the galaxy. Thus, Orion wanted to strangle our access to the central fire, and we had to do with what we have. So, mainly to smoke the overlords out. So, I believe this is part of the what is called ultimatum Orion gave the overlords. They thought they had all the time in the world to complete their mission, which is to attack Orion. And this is, lovely brothers, the main reason why we are now seeing in the world what is happening in the world. All these wars in wherever place of in the world are instigated to create loosh. What is loosh? Loosh is human soul energy that is being sucked away by these overlords, by these fallen archangels, by these fallen angels, by these archons, and by all these proxies known as elite, known as oligarchs. They need this human loosh, this human soul energy. So that is why there are so many wars going on in this world, and why the chaos is there in this world. Lovely brothers and sisters, you need to wake up to the real deal, hardcore reality that nothing is what it seems like in this world. You need to wake up that the overlords, these fallen archangels, and all these fallen angels, and all these archons, and all these oligarchs, and all these elite people are just pushing and pushing and pushing the human soul group further into the metaverse for their final plan, which is a total war, galactic, cosmic war against the Orion universe, against our creatrix. That is the thing. And you need to dive more into this understanding and stop following the talking heads on the telly, in the newspapers, on the radio, on internet, and stop being scrolling over social media, and stop listening to all these social media channels that are in actuality paid by the CIA, and these people that are having so much followers question that, because people whom are bringing real deal information, they do not have such amount of followers. Only those whom are CIA related people, whom are paid by the CIA to do and set up a social media channel, they have a lot of followers because they already start with a thousand amounts of followers. Because I know, and I'm not the only one, there are more people knowing this, that you can buy channels with already 1,000 followers on it. This is common things that are being done. So please wake the heck up and inform yourselves. Inform yourselves, educate yourselves about what is truly going on. See through all the psyops, and I would highly recommend you to also watch the work of Ole Damagaard. He's very skilled in decoding psychological operations, and we all can so much learn from this man in how he decodes psychological operations. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Something went wrong. I did something with a wire. Um, so I want to say, please go also to Olle Dammegaard. He's very skilled in decoding psychological operations, and we can learn a lot from how he is doing this. Okay, so we unwittingly help the overlords run amok, not only here, but also in other star systems. And this is something we do not realize how deep the consequences go for all the things that we do. We are constantly helping these fallen archangels. We are constantly feeding them. And so we are in actuality creating their war plan that they want to do against the Orion universe. So wake up, I would say. Let me see. Um, I need to have this done. No. So we are constantly feeding the wrong ones. Um, and everything we do has its consequences also in the rest of other star systems. So therefore it was requested that this must stop because it affects other parts of the universe, not only our neck of the galaxy. And thus, Orion wanted to strangle our access to the central fire, and we had to do with what we have, mainly to smoke the overlords out. And I believe this is the part of the ultimatum Orion gave the overlords. They thought they had all the time in the world to complete their mission, which is to attack the Orion universe, but now they lose oxygen, i.e., soul and spirit fire. So now you get to understand why all these wars are going on. Please wake up and see the things for what they truly are. And they must hurry because they and we are running out of energy. So not only they are running out of energy, we as humans themselves are also running out of energy. And if you see how humanity is terraforming this earth, then you can see that humanity is cutting itself off from any oxygen with all their ridiculousness and following all these ridiculous green agendas with this so-called carbon bullshit. So humanity is also undoing itself from oxygen. So it's killing itself also. Wow. Perhaps Orion is hoping the overlords will attack prematurely with a weak army that Orion can easily defeat with only a few casualties, rather than waiting for them to build a huge armada. Well, I think that the Orion has made a huge mistake here, and because it's already known that the Armada that the fallen archangels and the fallen angels and the archons have set up already is huge. Anyway, the queen loves us, her children, and she has been a little biased towards us according to other Orion star races, since she gave us one more boost of energy, which is the nanosecond, which the Pleiadians of Barbara Marciniak are also speaking about. Um, as a last chance for us to wake up and to leave. What to leave? The timeline of destruction. We need to leave this timeline. We need to leave this timeline of technology, because the technology, this timeline that technology is part of, is a destructive timeline. It is a timeline where one war after another shall take place, and eventually a huge cosmic galactic war. So get the heck out of that timeline and choose a timeline that is far more humane, and in which we as humans have the strings again in the hands of ourselves, of this earth, which is our planet. But in general, it did not help. Instead, the overlord stole that as well, and we got very little of it. So we need to wake the heck up and see where our position is in this world. And that's not a great one. Also, the depletion of energy influences the grid, which becomes thinner and thinner the less energy we have inside this construct, and this also creates holes in the energy net, the grid, which can help those who are now going to leave through a hole of the grid, so that they will not be captured by this tunnel of false light, or the staircase to heaven, which is another projection they use if you refuse option A. Um, and so the grid becomes weaker with less energy to feed. So now you get the understanding why they are in such a hurry with these technological agendas, why they are pushing the human soul group into artificial intelligence. Now you get the understanding why they are in such a hurry and why they want to have the most of their plans accomplished between now and 2030. And 2030 is around the corner. I think that was also a part of Orion's plan. It will make it easier for us to exit. Also, the battle between Orion and the Khan Kings in between 2008 and 2009, amidst the nanosecond, punches huge holes in the grid, which let the general central fire pour into the matrix while we were still aligned with the galactic center. Thus, we humans have received help from Orion more than we are conscious of. Um, and so more than once we got their help, but we have not been up to the task to recognize this. So let us recognize that Orion is helping us. And instead of being against them, let us be with them. Be against all these fallen pricks, be against archons, be against fallen angels, be against fallen archangels, be against the elite, be against the oligarchs. They have no best interest with the human soul group at all. They want to kill us. That's it. They don't care about us. They only care about themselves and to save their own ass. Thus, we humans have received help from Orion more than once, but we have not been up to the task to recognize it, except for a small group of people, relatively speaking. And I try it again. Um, all right. Now the overlords have become completely desperate because humans are starved of soul energy themselves too, and subsequently so are the so-called gods. Hence, we humans steal energy now from one another, so we have become narcissists too, who steal soul energy from our fellow brothers, sisters to keep ourselves alive. Um, So hence we humans steal energy from each other unwittingly in many cases, because it is not just narcissists who steal soul energy anymore, even so-called good people. So you can say every human being has become parasitic. Yeah, and this is what we see in society. This society, this world society, has become a gigantic parasitic world. Yeah, society. Every human being is parasiting on one another, some more than others do. So that is why you need to wake up to this. So even so-called so even good people do it without being aware of it. That is why you need to become aware of it, because the more you are aware of it, the more you can feel when another fellow brother sister is doing it. And the overlords enjoy when we steal each other's energy, because it ultimately becomes food for them, and they are glad to so-called help us in this. This is what happens in social media. This whole social media, all these platforms are in actuality built to collect people's soul energy. Yeah? That is why we see uh, on all social media platforms that 95% of the content is loaded with fear, with anxiety, with panic, with everything, with doomsday thinking and whatever. That's a reason for it. So where people are drawing energy from each other, and this world becomes more and more narcissistic, which the overlords, of course, wants, because they want us to have us in their image, so becoming even as narcissistic as they themselves are. Um, In other words, we become more and more like them, and therefore they will have an easier time taking us over in the final attack on Orion. Explained in the Orion book, volume 1, everything adds up. Some of us wake up anyway, but we soon notice it is not a simple task. No, it isn't. Yet it is the only path we know of on which we can on which we can save ourselves. We reconnect with spirit as we progress, as our minds stretch outside the matrix, and we use this connection to liberate ourselves. Hence, we can still retrieve some fire from the galactic center, but the matrix now takes so much energy that our own batteries run out nonetheless, and we may often feel exhausted and fatigued for no reason. Indeed, I think this is also the explanation why we see so many people more and more isolating themselves, because they do this also as a protection. And many people are more and more distancing themselves from others and isolating themselves to protect themselves, not to be used as a living battery by their fellow brother sister. Traumatized into obedience. The scientist Harold Kautz-Vella, nowadays only known Harold Vella, gives us a profound understanding of artificial intelligence, the singularity, metaverse, and what is going on today. I think this perspective is accurate, and it also shows how energy can be misused. And I will do this in two parts because it's quite a long chapter. There seems to be more narcissistic abuse going on today than ever before in modern times, let alone in human history on the planet. But the abuse we experience today does not seem in proportion to that in the past. Many blame social media, and I agree, social media indeed creates a lot of narcissism, sociopathy, and psychopathy, malignant narcissism, and Machiavellism, and abuse. In this book, we have discussed that the overlords want us to become like them, so they can easily take over our minds before they take over our spirit bodies, and that is true. However, another thing Mr. Vella is bringing up is that the overlords want us completely traumatized. So now, lovely brothers and sisters, you get the deeper understanding why this world is in a constant traumatization, why they instigate all these psychological operations, wars, rapes, abuse, and whatsoever. It is not in the mindset of these fallen archangels and fallen angels and archons and elite people and oligarch people to have us a peaceful, quiet life in which we can develop ourselves into higher levels of our consciousness. No, that is not what they want. They want us becoming lower than animals, so they can manipulate us more easily and control us more easily, and eventually can take us over more easily, because this is going on. Um, So the overlords want us traumatized because, as he explains, traumatized people run on mental personalities, the subconscious and unconscious mind. He says the mental field is linear and therefore quite predictable. It is stimulus response. You say or do something and you get a predictable counter reaction that is subconscious or unconscious. But emotionally, spiritually oriented people are not linear and therefore unpredictable. Those who are emotionally and spiritually inclined, therefore, cannot be easily controlled by a computer system. Hence, the overlord's goal is to traumatize us as much as possible. So that is why so many people are saying for decades, stop following the news. It doesn't bring you much. Um, So we become reactive and predictable instead of spiritually unpredictable. And this is exactly what we should create in ourselves, this unpredictableness. Um, Once people are in this false future metaverse, this false future that this false destiny that these fallen archangels and fallen angels and archons and oligarchs and elite people have with us and for us, and thus, in the cloud, it is important that the elite and the overlords can easily control all those people's minds to create a hive mind. Sentient World Simulation (SWS) is a relatively new term that explains in more detail what Harold Vella has said. So, sentient world simulation is an effort to model every person digitally to gain predictability to stimuli that can be used to control people's behavior. So, try to stay level headed and do not engage in reactive behavior. We who want to leave this mind controlled planet must ourselves break loose from all forms of mind control. And we do that by controlling our reactive behavior and exchange our uncontrolled reactions with controlled behavior that does not feed the system. So make sure you keep your unpredictable behavior. I have mentioned it before, but the Pleiadians said the same thing. The controllers have a difficult time controlling us because we are unpredictable. So let's keep it that way. Let's keep it that way. Our effects on the ka or void once we are there. So I have brought this up before, but it is worth discussing again to investigate this subject from a different angle. As mentioned earlier, many star races in Orion are concerned about letting us out in the ka. They think we as a soul group are too much like the overlords. I can completely see it from their perspective. A raw, unprepared human soul group out in the ka would be extremely dangerous and devastating for the entire universe. Orion has enough problems with a certain number of star races, leaving the developing worlds and starting their journey into the ka. Among those are warlike races that run amok in the lower dimensions of the ka. Although they technically do not have access to the upper dimensions, their behavior has a ripple effect on the waves of the cosmic ocean. Thus, what happens in the lower regions also tends to affect the upper regions to some degree. So, this has become a problem. Now take what we just discussed into perspective. The upper regions are still populated with ethical and benevolent creator gods or beings, creators. But what would happen if they let the human soul group out in its current shape? Well, it is not rocket science. We are creators ourselves by nature. So we will have access to the entire ka and we can therefore create wherever we like. Then consider that we as a soul group are not very ethical and often refuse to take responsibility for our own actions, which we blame on others. If beings with such mentality start creating wildly in the ka, the wild west of the lower regions, the wars and the conflicts would now move into the upper dimensions of the ka, also known as the void, as well. When that happens, what will be the solution to shut down the entire universe and start all over? Possibly. Or maybe the queen think. a new universe of free will. Or maybe the queen thinks a universe of free will does not work and she doesn't bother to create a new one. Even more possible. Perhaps she will uncreate the entire Milky Way galaxy. That could also be done. So, putting all this in perspective makes it easier to understand why Orion is reluctant to let humanity out. Just opening the cage is not an option, in my opinion. But if Orion still chooses to do that, humankind must be contained somewhere else so this soul group does not create any harm. In that containment, they must continue evolving until they become peaceful and ready to fly on their own. In other words, humankind must still be contained whatever happens. The only difference is that there will be no overlords trying to suppress their development. It might be a slow process for the soul group to recover and build ethical and moral strength and thus be willing to take full responsibility for themselves. No one of us is perfect, for sure, but we can work on ourselves to the best of our ability because of the law of free will. The human soul group, in its new containment, would need to evolve on their own. Otherwise, Orion breaks a secondary law, the law of non interference. Each soul group in the universe must evolve on their own. That is part of the essential plan for this universe. It is built into its foundation. All this applies to us too, who are determined to leave. Think of yourselves the way you are today when you read this. Who are you as a being? Are you aggressive, defensive? Are you responsible, compassionate, ethical, empathetic, loving? Ponder these things and write down things you believe you need to improve and work on them. It is imperative that we enter the Ka as the best possible version of ourselves. There is always room for improvement. Being creators in the Ka does not include creating cool warlike computer games. This is also why it is a good idea to live our lives here on Earth until the end, using the remaining years to improve. Some people ask me why we cannot just commit suicide. Well, there is more than one reason for this. But doing inner work during the rest of our lives is a reason as good as any not to end our lives prematurely. And there is a huge wave going on of this. Um, so let me continue. Consequences of misusing energies in 3D. We humans have misused our energy in the matrix wittingly and unwittingly. We are helping these overlords. We are helping the fallen angels. We are helping these fallen archangels. We are helping the archons. We are helping the elite people. We are helping the oligarch people. Yeah, to stay alive, to fulfill their agendas, and to terraform the planet in their ideas and vision as they seem fit for us. Us being the enthusiastic executioners of our own downfall. Exactly. In 1985, when the first computer came onto the so-called consumer market, Spirit told me already, mind you, in 1985, that if humanity would not ask any decent questions about that machine, it will become their downfall because eventually technology will become their downfall. Unfortunately, Spirit is right because what I see is indeed happening as what was being told to me in 1985. And in that time, I was, I think, 12 years old. The spirit energy invested in this experiment was a loan, and now the queen wants the energy back. Yeah, here comes a problem. That is the loan, and now the queen wants this energy back. That is the ultimatum. So the overlords are desperate because they broke this vow. They broke this ultimatum. They had a plan A, but no plan B, thinking they had all the time in the world to prepare for the invasion of Orion. To show they are serious, Orion now refuses to lend any more energy from the central fire, which gives them right to do so. And to be honest, if I were Orion Universe themselves, I would do the same to this construct. So this construct, this matrix, 3D matrix, is no longer supported by the central fire from the Orion universe. And that is what makes the overlords desperate. They feel they will lose the race unless they speed up their entire process. And this is exactly what we are experiencing. That is what we see happening in the world today. The race is on and things are implemented upon us at a baffling speed. This was also what the Khan King's collaboration with LPGC was about. Life Physics Group California was about. The overlords tried to create a plan B, which included an agreement with the Human Soul Group to cooperate with them so Orion cannot get to us. And Dr. Borden fell right into the trap, presenting himself as a representative for the entire humankind. He set us all up for signing a contract with the devil, the Khans. To them, having someone presenting themselves as a representative is enough because Borden then speaks for the entire soul group. So one bonehead has decided for each and every soul in this human soul group without us asking our permission for it, without informing us. This bonehead never informed any other soul in the human soul group. So he brought the entire human soul group into something from which I know and give you the guarantee that the majority of the human souls would not have allowed in any way, shape, or form. um, So Borden then speaks for the entire soul group. Therefore, the Orion source was not in favor of Dr. A.R. Borden. What right did Borden have to speak for all humans? Exactly. He said, did he ask us what we really want? No, he didn't. This plan failed and Borden died. Thankfully, that this plan failed. But he almost signed over humankind to the Khan kings, thinking the Khans were so-called good people. So fortunately for us, this whole plan that this Dr. Borden had from the Life Physics Group California did not succeed. But in any ways, maybe in some ways, there are human souls who fell prey to this and whom are indeed working with the Khans. Thinking the Khans were good people with our interests in mind, which they don't. The reason there are currently so many people on the planet is because the overlords need a lot of fire to put into the cloud. So now we get this whole idea of overpopulation. Fire is sparse these days and it needs to be conserved as fast as possible. So now we need to question this whole cloud idea, and we need to make the decision to not participate with that cloud system. Retract yourselves from it and leave that timeline. So the gods have enough to invade Orion. However, now it seems they have the energy they need, and therefore they can let people die off, reducing us to a number they ultimately can handle. So now we get the understanding of population control and the killing of humans, which is about 3% of the current population. That is the number of cyborgs they need for the invasion. They may leave the rest of us to perish, which might be a so-called good thing. People who do not want to go into metaverse can build their own communities, and when they die, they can potentially leave the matrix because the current grid will at that point probably not exist anymore and replaced by the AI cloud. Um, okay, as last, I will do repentance of the, between quotation marks, good guy. And with this said, I have then come to the end of reading this entire chapter. So it will be in one part and not in two. It seems like, with a few exceptions, this world is composed of abusers and codependents, whether it is in so-called romantic relationships or the relation to governments and other authorities. This is very interesting when it comes to energy consumption, because who is the so-called good guy and who is the so-called bad guy? Well, both are a program, so to say. Or are both the abuser and the codependent bad? Yes, they are, and they continue being so until they repent. What do I mean by this? So let us take a classical example. When a codependent leaves the narcissist, or the narcissist leaves them, the codependent complains about how much they gave in the relationship, but they got nothing back except abuse and neglect. This is usually true, but from a cosmic perspective, what was the codependent actually doing during the relationship? They borrowed energy from the central fire, and instead of using it constructively, they gave it to the narcissist in hope to improve the relationship. And the narcissist gratefully accepted it and consequently used it to boost themselves, but also to use it against the codependent to abuse them even more. So the codependent, who thinks it is his or her fault, borrows more energy from the cosmos and gives it to the narcissist, who now can abuse even more. And this is also happening on a collective level. So we are constantly misusing the energy from the central um, fire. This becomes increasingly significant when we talk about the overlords to whom the entire population is codependent. So we have become made codependent to fallen archangels, to fallen angels, to archons, to elite proxies, and to oligarch proxies. Makes you think. Human three-unit consciousness have, over time, sucked in an overwhelming amount of energy from the central fire into the matrix system and given it most of this energy to the overlords. The overlords take some of it as loosh and the rest they use to feed the system so they can oppress us even more. We run out of energy, so we borrow more fire from the cosmos and give it to our oppressors, who can then oppress us even more. And so it continues, this ongoing loop, vicious circle. The bottom line is that the codependents who think they are good people are actually the ones who are stealing the energy from the universe and invest it in their own oppressive system to feed those who oppress us, while they themselves go without. Of course, this would not happen without the overlords, but if we look at this soberly, and the way Orion looks at it, we are the ones who are feeding the system and are creating the imbalance in universal energy. So you cannot blame um, another person, you have to blame yourselves. In actuality, point the finger to yourselves. Each one of us is responsible for the condition and conditions that we are facing on nowadays Earth. Yeah? Each one of us has its part in this. No one is excluded from it. We all have a part in the drama of the world stage and everything that is happening. And unfortunately, the majority of human souls do not want to take responsibility. We must disconnect from our local narcissist as well as with the overlords and then the entire matrix, or we will be redeemable and judged together with the overlords. I hope the reader understands how crucial it is that we work on ourselves. If someone is together with a narcissist, they better start working on taking appropriate steps to disconnect. Otherwise, they are accomplices and even instigators of increasing the energy debt that is piled upon the rest of humanity. I would go so far as to say the reason why people do not wake up so we all can leave is because the majority of the population refuses to see the codependent situation they are in, because each and every human being has a form of codependency with another fellow human brother, sister, or with the governments, with the not only or with the governments, with the matrix system. We have made ourselves completely codependent, and now we have brought ourselves in an utterly dangerous position to be codependent on technology. So wake the heck up. And so the ones who refuse to see all this, they also refuse to do something about it. It is not a benevolent thing to be a codependent. And so with this said, I have come to the end of this chapter 16. And fortunately, despite the fallout and something that happened with the wire, I made it to read this entire chapter 16. So let all the information sink into your mind, heart, and soul, sink into your consciousness, into your subconsciousness, into your unconscious, and start pondering upon all this information and see the things for what they truly are, and be honest to yourself. Dare to be honest to and with yourself. Dare to finger point also to yourself, and dare to have the guts to acknowledge that you yourself also have a great part in all the things that are happening here on this earth. All right. with this said, I will leave and let us listen to a short piece of music uh, from Ben Sound titled Floating Garden. I'll see you next time with a new chapter. All right. See you soon and have a great day filled with a lot of love, truth, beauty, and revelations knowledge. See you.